Hello, everyone, and welcome to another elite episode of the Get Authentic with Marques show. I'm your host, Marques Ogden. On today's episode, we are joined by Mr. Dan Rochon. But before we bring up Dan to the stage, I want to thank one of our amazing sponsors, Primal Insurance. If you own a short-term rental in Florida, listen up because your current insurance policy probably isn't built for what you're actually doing. Standard homeowners insurance often won't cover guest-related damage, liability claims, or lost income if something goes wrong. In a state where hurricanes, lawsuits, and property risks are just part of the game, that's a massive gap. At Primal Insurance, we specialize in protecting short-term rental owners with coverage designed for Airbnb and vacation properties. This isn't about checking a box. It's about making sure that one bad guest or one bad storm doesn't wipe out your investment. If you're serious about protecting your property and your cash flow, call or text Josh Ford at 904-460-6432 or visit him at www.primalinsurance.com to get a quote today. And now here he is. Dan, how you doing today, Dan?
Fantastic, Marques. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem, my friend. Look forward to having you. We got connected by a mutual contact. Love that. First question, Dan. What does the word authentic/authenticity mean to you?
To be vulnerable. I think that a lot of times we hide our authenticity. Like in business, for example, there's often there's often a comparison of like your top success, but I made $100 today and not say that it took me $101 to make $100, right? And so that's inauthentic, right? If I'm going to be vulnerable and authentic, then I'm going to share like here is the reality, good, bad, and different, and that's what it means to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wrote down be vulnerable, but also tell everything from the way that it is, right, Dan? It's about being who you are and not trying to have people like you if you're not you, right? For example, right there, I said this on the show the other day. I said a couple days ago. I will still sometimes cry watching Rocky because it makes me think about my grandfather who was a boxing trainer. It makes me think about Dan when I lost everything in my business. I moved to Raleigh. I had $4 to my name. I was bankrupt, broke, no money, starting from the bottom. I had nothing. I had to start over from scratch, fired from 2 jobs in the same week. And Dan, to see where I'm at now, people like yourself coming on our podcast, great brand, things like that. It's like, wow, I really am just so grateful that, I'm where I'm at. So my point is, right, Dan, that's who I am. You don't like me because I cried during Rocky? That's okay. You don't have to like me then. Just keep it moving. And so this is where I feel if more people like you, like me, and like us just keep doing what we're doing, right, Dan, we can change the world one day at a time. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you think about the ripple effect, right? So the thing about changing the world is I don't necessarily believe, and there are people that are capable, and there are definitely people historically that have been able to make a significant impact in the world, like like Mother Teresa, for example, president of the United States, or some other Martin Luther
Gandhi,
King, right?
Gandhi,
Like
Martin Luther King.
Gandhi,
Yep.
right? Like there's these people throughout our history that really made a significant impact, and there's these people in our world today that also make a significant impact. And whoever's listening to this right now, that can be you, without the kudos, without knowing the impact. Like if I can change one person's life for the better, then I don't know what the next person life, I don't know what that's going to look like, right? I know I used to wait tables at the steakhouse in Washington D.C., and we would have a lot of celebrities come in. We would have all these really high profile clients, and there was this one guy, I won't say his name, but you would know his name. It's a world name, and he was the biggest jerk, best name I can give him, right? That you could imagine. And I would always want to wait on him. This is 25 years ago. And I would go to him, and the other waiters say, Dan, why do you want to wait on that guy? I said, because he's such a jerk that I want to make sure that I can improve his day. And they're like, why does that matter to you? It doesn't. What matters is when he gets in a taxi cab, that's how long ago this was, right? Before Uber. When he gets in that taxi, when he leaves here, and that taxi cab driver, if I can help this guy, be like a little bit better in his day, then that's going to have an impact on the next guy, on the next guy, on the next guy. And then what I really truly believe that how we can impact the world is little activities one at a time, not necessarily the next Martin Luther King Jr. or not necessarily the next Gandhi, but the next Dan Rochon or
You know,
Marques
Dan,
Ogden.
Dan, I love this because again, right, Dan, it's not about trying to be someone that makes a type of impact. It's about being who you are and making the most impact that you can. You might get to a global level, but you might always have a small, consistent every day, like you said, making someone's life better every single day. I live by this quote, Dan: consistency beats intensity every single time. Every single time. So I love where we're going. So, Dan, please tell us more about your journey and the work you are currently doing today.
Oh goodness. So it started when I was in the early 2000s, and I became sober. It was it was more than 21 years ago. On April 13th, 2020, 2005. And before I got sober, I was just a mess. And I was drinking 12 bottles. I was chained to this. I was drinking 12 bottles of beer a day, 2 bottles of wine a day, every single day. And I'd wake up hungover. I didn't know what to do. And as I mentioned, that was when I was waiting tables. And I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to be able to help people achieve their goals, help people solve their problems, be a resource for people, and make an impact in this world. I just didn't know how. And that's when I got my real estate license. That was the first, like official business that I had. Had lots of struggles with that. First 6 months, zero sales, zero money, right? And then I had a lot of success, and I was able to buy within 18 months after getting my real estate license, I bought the brokerage that I worked for. So I was very grateful for that. Sold that in 2018. I had around 150 agents or so that worked for me. Did lots of joint ventures, mortgage companies, title companies, all the such. And so what that evolved into was really me documenting and discovering what are the pillars of success to be able to, in business, to create consistent, predictable income. And I documented that. Recently wrote a book, Teach to Sell: Why Top Salespeople Never Sell and What They Do Instead. And I documented in that book, and that was 25 years of work, millions of dollars into investment of like education, and another millions of dollars investment into risk and learning and in documenting every single step of the way, so that now it's become a blueprint for salespeople who want consistent, predictable income.
You know, Dan, I'm writing something down and you beat me to it by coming. It's totally fine. You talk about the art of collaboration, joint ventures, all these things. You were able to get yourself together. You bought your agency. You were collaborating, JVing, all these different things, mortgage companies, brokers, all these different people. And I love that, Dan, because here's the thing. I tell people all the time, I'd rather have half of $1 million than 100% of $5. So
Absolutely.
many people, Dan, get so caught up on trying to do everything themselves. No partnerships, no this. I'm fine, da 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 da. No joint ventures, no collaborations. Can you please explain to our audience, right, Dan? We're going to get into your awesome book, how pivotal it was, how important it was in your business to joint venture, collaborate with people to get where you were, to be able to sell the business and then go to your next phase of life.
Yeah, I think many people, many younger business owners, entrepreneurs, salespeople, they look at money as the asset. And money is an asset, certainly. Yet, so is health, so is time, so is freedom, relationships, spiritual awareness, connection with God. I mean, there's so many other relationships. I may have said that already. But there's so many more assets than just money. And so once you recognize that, you say, well, in business, for example, certainly you need to have good energy. Certainly you have to be able to be vibrant and be able to have the fitness, right? That's helpful. But what I recognize that took me a few years to get this is that time is the second thing in business that really sort of jams up a business owner. And so I can work however many hours a day that I want to work, 5 days a week or 7 days a week if I chose to do that, but I only have 24 hours a day. And so at some point, there's only so much that I can create, right? And there's $100 I can create from that 7 days, 18 hours a week. Like there's a capacity. There's a certain number where that's it. You can't work any more hours. And so if you want to be able to scale, and if you want to regain your time as a vital asset, then that going and helping, working with others, doing joint ventures, finding the right partners, finding the right people in your own business, finding the right people to be in a relationship. That's how you're able to grow. And like you say, a little bit of a lot is a lot better than a lot of a little bit.
This is fantastic, Dan, because I'm a big believer in this. When you're talking about business and growth, it's all about preserving your time. I tell my clients constantly, right, Dan, focus on the high revenue generating activities, not the low ones. So, like, I have a great team of people, right, Dan? I have an operations manager. I have an amazing executive assistant. I have a great guy that helps build like workflows. I got a great guy helping with social media. I got a videographer, I mean, all this stuff, right? But my people, they do what they're supposed to do. They take care of a lot of the back end stuff, the low revenue generating activities, things that need to be done, but you shouldn't be wasting your time. One of my favorite quotes by Warren Buffett: no matter how much money I make, I can't buy back time. Can't
That's
happen.
it.
So
Yeah.
you gotta focus on interviewing people like yourself, building again. Don't close a sale. Open a relationship. Work on really getting in front of people, adding value, and for goodness sakes, if you're listening, stop trying to take. Give more. Give value. Help people. Really get into that. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about that next. But again, now, Dan, let's get into your awesome book. Please, one more time for our audience, say the title of your book.
Sure. It's called Teach to Sell: Why Top Salespeople Never Sell and What They Do Instead. And it's about how to be able to ethically influence, how to be able to have a blueprint of what I talked to you before about, like what I've learned through years and years of doing business, multiple different businesses successfully and some not so successfully, and putting it together in a blueprint so that the reader can follow the journey and have like it's a recipe book is what it is to have that consistent, predictable income.
So let's get into it, Dan. You said so they don't sell, right? Great salespeople don't sell, right? Please talk to us more. Don't give it away, but give us a little bit of an inkling because let me tell you what I think, okay, Dan? I believe top salespeople transfer their energy, their excitement, their passion onto the people they're trying to sell to. Therefore, the people they're trying to sell to, they feel that excitement, that energy, that passion. It's like, yep, I want that. Because I tell my clients, they can go and find the same product, service anywhere. Anywhere. Nobody has a monopoly on anything anymore. This is not the 1890s, like with the Vanderbilt family, doing the railroad. This is not that's what it is. If you want something from somebody, you can go find somebody else to offer it, to sell it, to give it to you. They are buying you, your excitement, your passion. I just interviewed on the show right there, Terry Fader, who was ventriloquist. He won America's Got Talent 2007. He had the longest running, I said, 18 years, 200 shows, the most successful show in Vegas history. And he responded to his people, his publicists, like, wow, what an amazing interview by Marques in all capitals. And they said he very rarely, if ever tells them how interviews went. Because I'm excited, I'm passionate. I was all about him, not about what my agenda was. So I'd love to hear from you, Dan, and your perspective from all of your years of expertise and wisdom. What do salespeople do? Like, what do they do?
Well, let me give you a model. So I go through this in the book Teach to Sell, called the Consistent, Predictable Income Communication Model, or the CPI model. And what the CPI model is there's 3 steps to this. Step 1 is to be in rapport. I'll tell you more about that in a second. Step 2 is ask in-depth questions. Step 3 is to actively listen. Rapport is a connection of energy. All right. So, we have I believe we're spiritual beings manifested in this human condition. And when I'm able to interact with you, Marques, and you're able to interact with me, it's a deeper level that we can connect with. And when we're able to really pay attention to that spirit, pay attention to that being more than just like the image of you're talking to Dan or whoever you're talking to, then you can connect on a deep, deep level. And that is what rapport is. And so understanding that we can connect at that deep level and then asking in-depth questions, which is another way of saying a deep diving question. So you want to go deep with your questions to really find out, what is it that you're afraid of? Where's your pain? What is your desire? When you achieve this goal of whatever it is that you desire, what does that do for you? That's a deep diving question. So first, to be in rapport, connection of energy. Second, to ask those in-depth questions. And third would be to actively listen, which you're actively listening to the energy. Okay, so it's really a communication model, which then allows for you to ethically influence. Now, what is sales? Sales is being able to identify somebody's goal, problem, desires, dreams, etc., what I just gave you the template to do, and then showing them that your product or service is the bridge in between whatever it is that they're afraid of, whatever it is that is their rock in their shoe, their pain, to whatever it is that they want, their desire. Then your product or service is the only way to be able to get from that pain to that desire. And when you're able to use that as a model in sales, you can have a very, very successful sales career, but you can also have a successful relationship with your wife, your partner, your husband, your kids, your best friends, right? Because it's about helping them get what they want to get, not necessarily you get what you want to get. But when you're able to pair all those up, what ends up happening is when you help enough people to achieve what they want to get, you're always going to fulfill your own dreams and your own goals.
Ladies and gentlemen, Zig Ziglar, when you help enough people get what they want, you get what you want. And Dan is spot on. It's about understanding people's problem pain. Dan, I finally, after years, finally found a very good automation workflow journey individual to help us build different workflows. We have a podcast workflow / journey. It's almost up ready to run. We're going to be working on the speaker workflow and journey, and then a coaching and consulting workflow and journey. Tying it back to our CRM, I'll have like an automated text message now. Like all these things, then 18 months ago, 2 years ago, I would have told you drop dead if you asked me to do that. Like, no way. But again, right, Dan, this is about how you have to pivot. You can't stay the same, right? You just can't. And in sales, you don't take a cookie cutter approach because every person you talk to is different. And that's key. So Dan, I have a saying, and I'm going to tell you my saying, and I want you to tell me how in your book you address this. I'm sure you do. I tell people, don't be interesting to people, be interested in people. Be interested, which means ask questions, be curious, deep dive what you were saying. How can you express to our global audience, Dan, the importance of being interested in people, not trying to be interesting to people?
Well, it's a great question. Thank you for that. When you're interested, then you're not only are you allowing the other person to feel important because you're interested in them, but you're also gathering data. So when the smartest influencers, I say influencer, I'm not talking about like the TikTok influencers. I'm talking about be able to influence another person, right? Influence a community, influence all for positive change. The smartest influencers, they don't talk much at all. They listen. And when you're listening, what you're doing is you're observing, what is this other person sharing with me? What is their energy? What is it that they're not saying that if I was to ask a better question would allow for me to understand that person more so? Okay. And just taking that, and the entire book is really about what you just said. It's about how to be able to ethically influence. And, I give, examples after examples of the blueprint of, do this and you get that. And it's really the bottom line of it is understanding that listening and being interested in the other person is the foundation of influence. Because when I'm talking, it's all about me, not about you. You got to make it about the other person.
Dan, what's really awesome, my friend, we have two big events coming up for speaking. One for the Big Eye of New York next Monday and Tuesday in Verona, New York. And then we have one coming up for Mass Mutual. This is their 175th anniversary. And we have in the PowerPoints, be interested in others, not interesting to others. We have on another slide, interesting to others, you talk too much. It's about you. You're not focusing on the client. Interested, you're listening more. It's client focused. It's not about you. And we've got these, and both of these PowerPoints, both these talks, that's being brought up because they're talking about people who are trying to recruit others or sell, or people that own their own insurance agency business and they're trying to sell. So this is sensational. I've got, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not getting excited about this, then you're in the wrong room. Here's my last question, Dan. I can see through video, and if you're not listening, if this is audio, he's got a great office, nice backdrop, love what he's got going. His book's looking all eloquent. It's a great setup. But I see something that says, never, ever give up. That's what I see. And ladies and gentlemen, I call that part of the BISON acronym, never, ever quit. Dan, can you please tell people how important it is, no matter what they do, no matter what industry they're in, the only way they lose in life is if they quit. If they don't quit, Dan, they're still in the game to win.
So Marques, I have the opportunity. I host the No Broke Months podcast. I just interviewed a billionaire on there, David Osborne, and he was sharing with me. This was literally about an hour ago, and he was sharing with me about. I asked him a similar type question, right? And so the fact is sitting there saying, listen, there's only two things in life. You either have a perceived success, or you have a perceived learning opportunity. So when you have a setback, you could choose to learn from that. If you choose not to learn from that, then that setback is truly a mistake. If you choose to learn from that, then the investment of whatever your time was, whatever your money was into the venture or whatever the case may be, that's your investment into it. So if I paid, $10,000 for something and it fails, then that's a $10,000 that's either a loss or $10,000 that's an investment into me, into my learning, or into the people that I lead. So understanding that as a sort of a framework, then if you always continue to say, you know what, I'm either going to learn through a failure or I'm going to succeed. But if I continue going, then the only outcome will be is either success or learning. And at the end of the day, if you're learning, in my opinion, you're successful.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the type of interview I love because Dan not only shed light with great knowledge, great wisdom, and great practical action steps, he also shared experiences, stories. Again, he interviewed a billionaire. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the thing. If you learn from a setback, it's not a failure. It's something you had to invest in. It's part of your education, right? And learning from things is more valuable than a Harvard education. If you actually learn something real time, like I learned in my business right there, my first business, I said to myself, if I ever got to a position of being successful and on track again, I'll never, ever let my ego get bigger than the good part of my soul. That was an expensive lesson. I went bankrupt. I went broke. I lost everything. I started at the bottom. But I tell you what, where I'm at today, I'll never, ever be that person I was in 2012. I have a plaque on my wall, Dan, from winning an award in 2011 to remind me, because when I won that award, I became the biggest prick on the planet. I keep that over there, so when I see it, I never, ever even think about going back to that old person. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what Dan is saying. Learn from your mistakes. Learn and apply. Dan, Great interview. How can our audience get in touch with you, listen to your podcast, buy your book? How can our audience support Dan Rochon?
Well, it's about supporting them, not me. And when they visit www.teachtosellbook.com, that's teachtosellbook.com, they can get a copy of the book, and that book is going to be your pathway to from, particularly if you're a salesperson, from that, that inconsistent, like, where's the next deal coming from? How do I believe in myself? How do I build a business around this? How do I, all those things that we struggle with as business owners, and giving you the blueprint to be able to succeed. And they can visit the teachtosellbook.com. Outside of that, Google my name, Dan Rochon. I would love to connect with you on social medias. If you Google that name and you see the hockey player with no teeth, that is not me. I'm the other guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, go and support Dan. Follow him on social, connect with him. Great guy, and pick up his book. Again, he is speaking our language. And again, that's why he's successful, because he understands it's not about selling, it's about energy. It's about interested in people. Don't be interesting. And that is the authentic tip of this great interview. Learn how to be more interested in people than trying to be interesting to people. Interested, asking questions, listening. Interesting, talk too much, diarrhea of the mouth, bad things happen. And we want to thank again Primal Insurance for sponsoring this episode. Again, my name is Marques Ogden. I am the host of the Get Authentic with Marques show. Thanks for tuning in. Have a fantastic day.